right, in this video, we're gonna practice reporting the 6 W's when given different scenarios. So let's go ahead and start here. And let's first, before we read it, this one, let's talk about what our 6 W's are. So we have who, what, when, where, why, and how. And the order isn't very important. So what is who? This one is maybe the most confusing. It's the person or thing we're collecting data about. So this one can be confusing because, say, for example, we have a scientist and the scientist is studying rocks. You may want to say the scientist is the who, but the rocks would actually be the who. It's the thing we're collecting or a person we're collecting data about. Doesn't necessarily have to be a person. What is the data we're collecting? It's basically the different variables we have. So we're the scientists studying rocks. What are the things, and we have our little notebook out, what are the things we're writing down? We may be writing down, and we're studying a bunch of different rocks. We're picking up each rock, we're gonna write down maybe the weight, the type of rock, the color, the density. What are the different pieces of information we're collecting about our who? That's the what. So it's just our variables. The rest are pretty self-explanatory. When is it happening? Where is it happening? Why are you studying it? Do you want to find out what the most valuable type of rock is, the most dense type of rock? What is the reason you're collecting data? So why are you collecting data at all? And then how, this is just like, what method are you using to collect your data? Are you using a survey? Did you post a poll online that people can fill out? Are you just using observation? Did you set up an experiment? Do you have some sort of quiz? Are you interviewing people? So things like that will be your how. So pause for a moment if you want to write any of this down. I would write at least the who and what. Who, again, is the person thing you're collecting data about, and what is the actual data you're collecting? What are the different things you're writing down about your who? So let's go ahead and look at this example. In 2003 Tour de France, Lance Armstrong averaged 40.94 kilometers per hour for the entire course, making it the fastest Tour de France in 100-year history. In 2004, he made history again by winning the race for an unprecedented 6th time. In 2005, he became the only 7-time winner and once again set a new record for the fastest average speed. You can find data on all the Tour de France races on DVD or on the DVD. Yeah, ignore that part. Here are the first 3 and last 12 lines of the data set. Keep in mind that the entire data set has nearly 100 entries. Ooh, so it looks like we didn't get the data set. So the data set would probably show us what the different variables are. So we'll just skip over the what for now. We would need that table to answer that. But let's see what else we can figure out. So, and you can just kind of go fill in whatever's there as you go. So like here, right away, it gives us a date. So it tells us about the 2003 Tour de France. And let's see, So it looks like we have different years. So for when, it looks like we're talking about 2003 to 2005. And the table would maybe make that more clear, but that seems like a good answer. And what else do we have? Where we could say France, because we're talking about the Tour de France. And who? Let's see, so Tour de France races. So it says, so based on this scenario, it sounds like the data that we have is on the different cyclists, is that the word? The different cyclists that we have in the races. So who are we collecting data on? We're collecting data on the different cyclists, the different racers. And it doesn't really say why we're collecting data. We could probably assume, but we don't necessarily need to. They maybe want to know who's the fastest, has the fastest time, what is the average time, things like that. But it doesn't necessarily say that's why they collected data. So we don't need to fill that out. And also, it doesn't say how they measured times. Maybe they use stopwatches, some sort of other device. It doesn't say. So this would be the information we can gather here. You won't always have every single one. Let's look at another one, and we should have everything we need for this one. So, medical researchers at a large city hospital investigating the impact of prenatal care on newborn health collected data from 882 births during 1998 to 2000. They kept track of the mother's age, the number of weeks the pregnancy lasted, the type of birth, the level of prenatal care the mother had, the birth weight and sex of the baby, and whether the baby exhibited health problems. So let's go ahead and do our 6 W's. Let's start off with the who. So who are we collecting data on? And you may want to say mothers in this case, because we have information on these mothers' births. But here it says they collected 800 data from 882 births. So it sounds like the best thing to put here is the 882 births. And we can be most specific by putting during 1998 to 2000. Remember, the who is just a sample. Who are we collecting data on? Now let's look at the what. So we want more space for the what because we're going to list all of our variables. And also we'll talk about categorical versus quantitative, if you remember that. So what? So for these 882 births, what piece of information are we writing down in our little notebook? That's our question. So let's see, it says they kept track of all these things. So we have a lot of things to write. Mother's age, number of weeks pregnancy lasted. We'll just kind of abbreviate here. Weeks, type of birth, type, level of prenatal care, birth weight and sex, and whether the baby exhibited health problems. So good number of variables here. And these ones, let's see what we can do. So number of weeks mother's age is first. And we'll just put Q for quantitative or C for categorical. Remember, when we want to find out whether they're categorical or quantitative, we just ask ourselves, would the value for this variable be numbers with units? If it's numbers with units, it's quantitative. If not, it's categorical. So like mother's age, what would be some values for this variable? Maybe 32 years old. 25 years old, and so on. These are numbers with units, so this would be quantitative. How about number of weeks the pregnancy lasted? That would be numbers with units. I don't, let's see, how many weeks would a pregnancy last? Probably a good number of weeks, who knows? Maybe like 40 weeks or something like that. In any case, it's a number with units. Weeks is a units, so that'd be quantitative also. Then it says the type of birth, cesarean, induced, natural. Those are not numbers with units, because when it puts parentheses after the variable, it's telling you the different values it can be. The type of birth can either be cesarean, induced, or natural. Those are not numbers with units, so that's categorical. Level of prenatal care the mother had. Again, it tells us the possible values in this parentheses. Those are not numbers with units, categorical. The birth weight and sex of the baby. So birth weight of the baby, 7 pounds, 8 pounds, so on. That's numbers with units, quantitative. Sex of the baby, male or female. Those are not numbers with units, so categorical. And health problems, again, it tells us the possible values here, not numbers with units, so categorical. So we have a lot to do for the what. Now let's look at the other ones. Let's see, is there anything for when? And it tells us that it was during 1998 to 2000. So there's something for when. How about, what else do we have? Where? Medical researchers collected data from 800. So it looks like maybe we could put large city hospital here. That's not that specific. And it doesn't necessarily say that they collected the data from this hospital, but we can probably assume that. Yeah, I mean, it is possible that they, even though they're from this hospital, they went and collected the data from other places. But I'd say it's safe to assume they collected the data from this hospital based on the information we have. You don't necessarily have to make assumptions, I would say. But maybe on some sort of test question, they would have large city hospital. So we'll just leave that for now. And what else do we have? Why? Did they tell us any why? It says, oh yeah, here we go. It says they were investigating the impact of prenatal care on newborn health. So they wanted to know about impact of prenatal care. Or we should put investigate. They wanted to investigate the impact of prenatal care on newborn health. And then let's see, effective prenatal care. And then what else do we have? Who, what, when, where, why, how. We'll squeeze that in here. So how is saying, how did they collect the data? Let's see if it tells us. They collected, it just says they collected data. They kept track. And this, it doesn't really say how they collect data. Keeping track, I wouldn't really say is a method of collecting data, like, because we don't know how they got the mother's age. Did they ask the mother? Did they have her fill out a form? Things like that. So how, we could maybe leave this one blank. Oh, and also something we want to practice doing is saying what the population is, if you remember population. So remember, population is everyone that we want to know about, and sample is the group we actually study to learn about that population. So in this case, these researchers, maybe they want more data than they were just able to collect. Let's see, so it says they're at a large city hospital investigating the impact of prenatal care on newborn health. So it sounds like ideally, if they want to know the impact of prenatal care on newborn health, they would be interested in learning about all births. So for population, we can maybe put all births here. Even though they want to know about the effect of prenatal care in all births, they only studied 882 births. So population, we could maybe put all births. So we'll pause for a second in case anyone's getting this down. Okay. Let's look at another one together. The Gallup poll conducted a representative telephone survey of 1,180 American voters during the first quarter of 2009. Among the reported results were the voters' region, age, party affiliation, whether or not the person had voted in the 2008 presidential election. So let's go through the 6 W's, and actually let's go ahead and start off with the population and see if there's anything we can put for that. So let's see, they conducted a telephone survey of 1,180 American voters during the first quarter of 2009. So this one, I'd say there's not really anything we can put for the population. And I'd say maybe one reason in general why you might not be able to figure out the population is if it doesn't say the why. So we don't really know. It doesn't say necessarily why they surveyed these voters. I mean, probably it's to figure out how the election might go or collect just like campaign data or something like that. But if we don't know why they're conducting the experiment or the survey in the first place, it might be hard to figure out what the group of people they want to learn about is. So population, I'd say for this one, there's not really anything to put. Maybe it is all voters, but I'd say we don't have enough information to say that. So let's go ahead and start off with the group. What is our sample? Who are they actually collecting data on? And so this one is going to be 1,180 American voters during first quarter of 2009. That's our who. Now let's go ahead to our what. So what information are we collecting about those 1,180 people? It says the things that were reported were the voters' region, age, party affiliation, whether or not the person voted in the 2008 election. So now let's go through and do categorical and quantitative for these. So let's see, voters region, it tells us the different values for this variable. They can live northeast, south, maybe southeast, west, and so on. So those are not numbers with units, so we put categorical. Voter age, are they 21 years old, 70 years old? Years old are units, so we have numbers with units, that's quantitative. Party affiliation, that just means like Democrat, Republican, or other party, so on. Those are not numbers with units, so we put categorical. And did they vote in the 2008 presidential election? What kind of answer are they going to give? They're probably going to say yes or no, or maybe decline to answer or something. None of those are numbers with units, so we put categorical. Let's see. Next, we have when, and it says first quarter of 2009. First quarter 2009. Where? And we're talking about American voters, so we could reasonably put America. And let's see, what else do we have? Why? We already mentioned that they didn't really say a why. Why would they collected this data? How? And this is good. They mentioned a clear how here. It says, oh, a representative telephone survey. That's how they collected this data. Representative telephone survey. And let's see, those are our 6 W's. Again, we don't need every single one. We just fill out the ones that we can based on the information we're given. So that would be our answer for this one. So let's go ahead and try a practice. This will be practice number 1. Let's go ahead and pause the video, give this one a try. And let's say you want to find the population, if there is one, and then the 6 W's. Let's try this one out. So pause the video if you haven't already, and go ahead and try this one. All right. In 2006, Consumer Reports will publish an article evaluating refrigerators. It listed 41 models, giving the brand, cost, size, type, estimated annual energy cost, and overall rating, and the repair history for that brand. So let's go ahead, population and 6 W's. So let's start with the population. Actually, that one maybe makes most sense to come to at the end. Let's start with who. Who are we collecting data on? So this did 41. Okay, so the data that was collected or reported is these 41 refrigerator models. Now let's look at the what. What piece of information did we write down about each of these 41 models? Well, it tells us, it gives us this big list of brand, cost, size, type, estimated annual energy cost, overall rating, repair history, yeah, good. So now let's go through and mention whether each one of these is categorical or quantitative. So brand, that's going to be categorical. It's not going to be numbers with units. It's going to be like, what are some refrigerator brands? Maybe like General Electric, Maytag, I think that's a brand, so on. Anyways, it's going to be words, not numbers with units. Cost, that's going to be like $500, $600. That's a number with units. Dollars are units. Quantitative. Size in cubic feet. So that's telling us that it is going to have units. It's going to be numbers, so that's quantitative. Type, it gives us an example of a value for this variable. It says it could be like a top freezer or a different type. That's not a number with units, so categorical. Energy cost, anytime you're talking about cost, it's going to be quantitative. Overall rating, it tells us it can be good, excellent, or similar things. Those are not numbers with units, so categorical. And the repair history. Percentage requiring repairs over the past 5 years. So this one, let's see, percentage requiring repairs over the past 5 years. Is this quantitative? I'll have to double check this one, to be honest. I'm trying to think about whether we'd consider percentages as units. And for now, let's say yes. We'll call this quantitative, but again, I'll have to double check on that. So we'll put a little asterisk next to that, or a little star. Now let's look at when. It says in 2006. Let's see, does it tell us where? It does not. Does it tell us why? And I guess it kind of does. And some of these are a little bit tricky. Maybe you wouldn't put anything because you don't think it tells us clearly enough. But this one, it says they published an article evaluating refrigerators. So we could probably put to their reason was to evaluate refrigerators. And if we know our why, then let's think about our population. They only studied 41 models of refrigerators, but did they want to learn about a bigger group of things? And if their goal is to evaluate refrigerators, probably they want to know about all refrigerators. Again, this may be a little bit of a judgment call. Like maybe you would say there's not enough information, or maybe you would say based on the information, we can conclude that they would want to know about all refrigerators. So we'll maybe just go ahead and make that assumption. And then lastly, how? Let's see. Did it tell us how they collected this information? It did not. So this is all the information we could gather for this one. At this point, let's go ahead and pause the video and work on the first part of the classwork.